No, it seems to be recording right away. Perfect. All right. Welcome to another WoTTalk. Today we are having the fantastic Bedtime Bookworm, aka Jade, on to discuss the fact that she just finished The Wheel of Time and then transitioning, damn it, I was doing well, into some of your all's favorite scenes from The Wheel of Time. How are you doing, Jade?
Doing well, doing well. I can't believe I have finished the series because this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, how many years did it take you with your actual second read through?
So starting recently, it was only the I guess I started the Wheel of Time read along in January of 2017. Is that right? 2009? No, 2018. So that's like 14 months, but I actually started reading the series before we started the read along officially, like 4 months before that. But the very first time that I read the series was back when I was in high school, which is like a long time ago. I graduated in 2006, and I started reading it obviously before I graduated. So it's been a long time. I had a bunch of starts and stops, and I reread like the first half of the series multiple times because when I started reading it in high school, I read up to whatever books were out, and then there were multiple years when books were between books coming out, and I would like reread some before the new book came out, and then when I went to college, I kind of like stopped reading for a while, and then I reread when I was in college up to like the last two books weren't out at that point, and then that's when I did this last reread because I started all the way over just so I could read the last two books with a fresh point of view.
So it's kind of interesting is you've done one solid read through, but you also have partially like some of the advantage of doing a reread because I'm sure you caught a lot of stuff early on in the series that stuck out because you knew it was coming up until a certain point.
Yes, yes. And that is one of the things that I love about this series is it's so rereadable. And I think that if even if I had like done one read through all the way and then reread all the way again, I wouldn't have picked up on some of the stuff at the beginning because like each time I would do a reread of some books, it's like I get another layer of understanding and I remember just a little bit more the next time that I read. There's just so much like detail in these books that it's impossible to soak it all up in one read through or two read throughs. There's just so much more that you can pick up on each time you read it because you understand so much more every time you read it.
I don't think I've heard anyone ever say, I want more detail from Wheel of Time. I think universally people are like, it's either right amount or too much.
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
so
That's
now
why I
that
have a
you,
hard time like recommending it to people because I mean, I love it and I know a lot of other people love it, but there's just like so much to it that I know that a lot of people either won't pick up on a lot of the subtleties or they'll be overwhelmed or I feel like it appeals to a very specific type of reader. And so I have a hard time recommending it to people because I'm always so scared that they're going to hate it.
I understand that. And typically my okay, I'll recommend Wheel of Time to this person is if they've read a series on a scale of A Song of Ice and Fire and it
Mm-hmm.
didn't intimidate or bother them. If you can handle that, you can go as far as Wheel of Time in my mind. Because Wheel of Time is more readable than a lot of them with the writing style, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is definitely a lot easier to read than A Song of Ice and Fire, especially like the beginning books. There's a lot less like the depth is there in the beginning books, but it's not super obvious. So it's easy to read it without like understanding the full scope of it. And that's why I always tell people like wait till you get to like book 4 and then you'll kind of really get how big the series is and how like the big picture of it is, but you can read the first like 4-ish books, I think, and like just kind of have more of a superficial understanding of what's going on, and it's still a lot of fun.
So that actually brings up something I want to talk about more on my channel in general and haven't gone totally in depth with yet. And that's kind of like Robert Jordan's staggered introduction to the world. I feel like it comes in almost phases, which is a very strategic move with how large his world is. Did it kind of strike you as more digestible because he seems to give you this huge world in chunks, or are you kind of more of the opinion like I want more now, I want answers earlier on? Because I've heard both. I've heard people say no, just dump more on me in book one. I want to get the full scope, and I've heard other people say they appreciate the fact that it is more staggered in its release.
I think I'm in the staggered group. I like that because I don't think I would have understood everything if it had been just dumped on me in the beginning. I like that
Mhm.
you learn more as you go along.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm of the same opinion. I do think in book four, though, there is quite a large just exposition of this whole other side of the world, the waste and the Aiel. And I think if at the same time we were trying to juggle the entire wetlands, it would have been too much for almost any reader. Maybe not Malazan fans, but most other human readers. Interesting. So you finished. Let's go ahead and jump into full spoiler warning here for WoTTalk. So if you've been in the spoiler-free section, you got up to about 6 minutes, but now you're done. Sorry, leave. And we're going to go ahead and ask, what did you think of the ending of The Wheel of Time?
So overall, it was pretty satisfying. There are a couple things that I had issues with at the very end. Mainly the way that Rand's storyline wrapped up. I wasn't really satisfied with that. And I just had like a lot of questions. So I will say that I was not surprised that Rand wasn't actually dead. I had would have I think I would have expected that anyways because of just like the way Robert Jordan is. It's really hard to kill off most of his characters. And I, in my heart, didn't want him to be dead, but I did also see some like vague spoilers. I think someone had alluded to how Rand is Christ-like at some point in some forum somewhere, and I was like, oh, great, okay. So I kind of was expecting that he wasn't really dead, but I had so many questions about what actually happened. Like, how did his soul get moved into another body? And then also, like, even if, I mean, not even if he's alive, he is alive, but like, why didn't he tell his friends and family? Why did he let them think that he was dead? Like, that just didn't sit right with me. I mean, obviously, the two women who he's bonded to knew, but
Right.
like, that just seems like a really big secret to keep, especially from his dad. And like, to like this, the ending, his dad is like setting him on fire on this pyre, and they're all like sad. And I understand he didn't want the whole world to know that he was like still alive, but like, your family, come on. So like, it didn't sit right with me, and it bothered me. Like, that was the one thing about the ending that I didn't like. But other than that, I really loved everything about the ending.
See, I just had the assumption that Rand is like, a week later, he's gonna pop up by Tam and be like, "By the way, I'm Rand. I'm alive. Let's talk about it." I figure he will eventually tell people, just not, let them believe that their son, their best friend, is dead. But I get what you're saying. It would have been nice to actually have those scenes,
Yeah, well, I feel like
in the
that's kind of
text.
cruel, right? Like, the hardest part about grieving for someone is that very beginning.
Mhm.
And well, I mean, I guess that's kind of an assumption on my part, but I would think that like, why have them suffer like that first moment or those first moments of thinking somebody that you love is dead, to be like, surprise, actually I'm not. Like, yeah, they'll be glad that he's not dead, but it's like, it seems kind of cruel to like make them suffer through that. I
I guess because Rand is an epic troll. No.
don't know.
No, I get what you're saying. It is kind of a jerk move. I never really thought about it like that because I always just assumed like, oh, he'll tell him later. But if I've had friends pass, and if one of those friends came up to me like 2 days later and was like, "I'm alive," I'd probably hate that person. Uh,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
yeah,
Like, that's really cruel.
yeah. Okay, fair point. How about the transition into Brandon's writing from Robert Jordan's? That's kind of the biggest question that fans ask each other when they get towards the end of the series.
Uh, I did not have any issues with it. I thought that Sanderson did a really good job, like picking up the reins. I thought he did a great job with the characterizations. I know some people have said that they didn't think he got Matt right, at least not right away. I didn't notice anything. I thought he did fine, and in many ways, I thought that Sanderson did a better job in, not in many ways, but in some aspects, like the pacing and he cut down a little bit on some of the descriptive writing. He gave you enough so that you knew where you were and what was going on without it being like overly descriptive, which I think isn't hard to do when you're that far into the series. It's not like you're doing a whole lot of new world building. A lot of the groundwork has already been set.
Hmm.
But his pacing, I enjoyed a lot more. He had a lot shorter chapters and a lot of POV changes, and I think that helped get things going. And it also just a lot more stuff happens in the last three books than in like the three books prior to it. But yeah, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed Sanderson's writing and him taking over the series. I didn't have any issues with it.
Okay. And you are, in just to let people know, in general a Sanderson fan, correct?
Yes. But I
Okay.
didn't read Sanderson until after I had read the first Wheel of Time book that he wrote. That was like the last read through I did when I was in college before this read through. And I had read book 12, and that was all that was out at that time. And I was like, oh, I really like this Sanderson guy. Let me see what else he's written. So that's when I had read more after that.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that most people are that way, because Brandon, he was a successful author before he took over Wheel of Time, but not nearly. I mean, Wheel of Time really propelled him to new heights. So I think most people,
Yeah.
that's the case.
Yeah, I think so
At least
too.
I've come across. I think I met a couple people at Jordan Con who definitely said they had read Brandon beforehand, and were excited when they heard he was announced. I do remember hearing that this author was going to take over a series, and my first thought was like, that seems impossible. Like, how
Yeah.
can you finish off one of the biggest fantasy worlds ever when you're just some guy? And that was my mentality. I was like, who's this guy?
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think he was very popular before he picked up the Wheel of Time series.
yeah,
I hadn't heard of him, but I also wasn't very like plugged into the book world at that time. I just kind of like read what I wanted to and what I'd heard of. But yeah, I think that Sanderson definitely got a lot bigger after picking up the Wheel of Time and doing such a good job with it.
yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that it's a certainly, like, I don't want to say like underdog moment. That seems a little exaggerating, but it's a I think more people figured he would fail just because it's such an incredible undertaking, to handle. I mean,
Oh,
I
for
think most
sure.
people just were like, "Oh, that's not going to work out." But Harriet certainly knew who she was tapping, and picked someone who, luckily, was influenced incredibly heavily by Robert Jordan. So it was a nice finish off. I've asked the question, who else would you have rather seen finish the series? And I've heard so many suggestions, from George R. R. Martin to, uh, I think Terry Pratchett was still alive at the time, so Terry Pratchett, all these people, and I can't see any of them being as good a fit as Brandon was.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, granted, I'm probably not as widely read as you are, but I can't think of anyone else's writing style that fits as well at
Hmm.
all.
Okay.
I mean, obviously Sanderson has a different writing style, but it's in many ways very similar.
And I also think he did mask his own writing style a little bit to match
He
Jordan's
did,
more.
yeah.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was a clear few changes. Um, all right. Well, is there any other comments you would like to make about finishing the series? Anything you stuck out to you, like, the ending of all these characters, any arcs that you loved, hated, a couple of the big deaths? Anything you'd like to comment on that?
Oh my gosh. Egwene,
Yeah.
her death hit me pretty hard. I really like Egwene. So, when you are in the middle of this big massive series, you have a hard time avoiding spoilers and like people talking about things that you haven't come
Yeah.
across. I did a fairly okay job with that, but I had heard before finishing the series that people felt like she was more out of character at the end of the book, or at the end of the series, and they didn't like the turn that she took. But I didn't feel that way at all. I really loved Egwene's story arc, and I just thought she grew so much as a character and became so strong. I loved her as Amerlin. I thought she did a really good job. Like, she was just so smart when it came to how to handle situations and stuff. I knew that Gawain was going to die because I had actually spoiled myself for that, because at some point during my rereads, I came across Galad and Gawain, and I couldn't remember which was which. So I was like, oh, let me just Google this. So I knew that Gawain was going to die. But there were so many moments where I was like, is this when he's going to die? Like, whenever he was defending Egwene when she was in Tel'aran'rhiod and was stuck there because of the Dream Spear, and he was fighting those like Shan assassins, I thought he was going to die there,
Hmm.
because they kind of do like a blackout moment where they kind of leave you hanging. And then he did it, and I was like, okay. So by the time I got to the last book, I was like, okay, I know he's going to die. So when that was happening, I was just like frustrated. I was so frustrated with Gawain because he was being stupid, but I knew that it had to happen. But I was really hoping that Egwene would be able to outlive him. And so her dying like that at the end was pretty tough.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny. I always thought Gawain and Galad going off to fight Demon Dread, I was like, this is like a 5-year-old going off to fight, like, Conor McGregor. Like, this is really
Yes.
outclass.
Like, what are they doing? I mean, if anyone, I thought Galad had a little bit of a better chance. Yeah. But Gawain, he's not that good. That was like really cocky. I mean, granted, he thought he had like, the Terangrial that was going to help him, and it did help him, but it was not enough. But even like when he very first put on those Shan-Chan rings, I was like, what was her name? That Shan-Chan woman told him not to put them on because like if you put them on, you're going to die. And he did it anyways. Granted, he was trying to save Egwene, but like I was just frustrated with him.
Yeah.
I did not want him to make those dumb decisions.
With the Warder Bond, he also had the amulet, correct? Where he couldn't get channeled that. He had a copy of the amulet.
Yeah. Yes, he did.
And then also the rings. I figured he's at like a halfway to Captain America power level. You know what I mean? Like he's getting there. And then he's trying to fight someone who can literally like decimate cities. I'm like, no. You're going down a hill. You can't win here.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that fight, when Lan went up there to fight him, I was like, what is he doing? And I totally thought that Lan died. I think they kind of like made it seem like he did, but then he didn't. And I was really upset because I did not want him to die. So I was very happy when it turned out that Lan was not dead.
See, I'm of the opinion he should have died. I know that's like controversial. I mean, people love him being alive, but to me, the way his arc was going, he should have died.
Yeah, I could see that. But I'm one of those like wimpy people who doesn't like it when their faves die. So
no, I don't blame you at all. It's way better when they don't. But I just the way like his whole character arc was I'm gonna die fighting the Shadow, and then he's like, oh no, I'm fine. Not fine. He's got a sword through him, but he's alive.
Right. Right.
But
another
maybe it's just the writing, but like for me, I know. Maybe Galad is just as good a swordsman as Lan, but for some reason when Lan went to fight Demon Dread, I was like, that's a fair fight. I don't know why. Like, it's really not. They're the same level, but I guess it's just who Lan is.
Yeah, no, I felt the same. Another character death that really got me was when Swan died. That was really unexpected for me because, like, Minute had that viewing, but just like they said in that little scene, Swan thought that viewing had like already happened whenever Bryn saved her a few books ago from the Shan-Chan assassins. Well, I thought the same thing, so I was not expecting she says like Min sees her and says, "No, you need to be with Bryn right now. Like it hasn't happened yet." And then right after that, she died, and I was like, "What?" I was so upset.
I thought it interesting that Min has certain viewings to the future that are conditional. Like
you think so?
I mean, like it doesn't she say like you need to be with Gareth Bryn or you will die. Like you need to be with him. So it's almost like they're trying to insinuate free will still exists while having someone who sees the future.
Yeah. She does say that like some of them definitely come true, and some of them, it depends on how things happen, and she doesn't always. She said that the ones that she knows what they mean always come true.
Yeah. Well, I think the way I always interpret it, and this is maybe completely wrong, but like I think Robert Jordan wanted free will in his book, so he had some of them be conditional, but there are certain things that will happen. Like no matter what choice anything in existence of Earth made, a meteor is going to hit and wipe out the dinosaurs. There's no sentient choice that could stop that. And I think certain things are just, that's inevitable. You can't stop it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So transitioning out of that, I asked some of my followers here on Discord what some of their favorite Wheel of Time moments are of all time that they'd like to see us discuss. And we got a lot of picks that surprised me. The first one is one that I've always thought was good, but certainly not in the upper echelon of the Wheel of Time moments. So I'd love to hear your take on it, and that is the Falma battle scene.
Oh, I love the battle at Falma. That's definitely one of my top ones. One of the top endings to a book out of the series. I love like that it's the first time we're introduced to the Shan-Chan and we see like how powerful they can be, but also to have the Horn of Valir blown and see all of these dead heroes. And we've heard of the Horn of Valir like multiple times, but when it very first happened, I did not think that was going to happen, that it was going to get blown at that moment. To me, I was thinking like that's something that's going to happen in the last battle. from like the little that I knew at that point. So I just remember being so shocked and like seeing all these heroes that we've barely heard about in the series. Yeah, that's one of my favorite battles for sure.
I guess for some reason for me, like I like the subversion where you think like Rand's gonna blow the horn or something like that, and then it's Matt, who at that
Mm-hmm.
point is not the best fleshed out character. He becomes one of the best characters, but at that point he's just kind of been
Right.
dagger ridden Matt. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
I liked all that. But this is gonna sound like such a nitpicky thing, and I do think it's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not good, but the having Rand fight in the sky moment for me was so jarring. I think it's why I can't put it as one of the greats, because it just felt like this weird standout. Why is this happening? It doesn't make sense with the magic we understand so far thing.
That's
And
true.
it's I don't think it's
Yeah.
ever explained why did Ishamael bring him up there? Like why would he do that? That always just seemed kind of strange to me.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It never really bothered me that much, I think, because anytime Rand, well, I mean, at that point, that's the second book,
Mm-hmm.
right? At that point, we've only had one other battle like this. But in the first book, when Rand is fighting the big bads or whatever, it's very abstract. Like anytime he has a battle with them, it always seems very abstract. And to me, that's kind of how the battle in the sky also
Mm-hmm.
was. And so it felt in some ways similar to the ending of the last book. So I don't think it really like jumped out to me, but it is kind of weird. You're right.
I don't know. I'm so analytical. It's a problem. I need to stop being so analytical. But there's a part of my brain that immediately was like, why? What is happening right now? What's the justification for this? Does Shemael like want to put on a spectacle? And then you learn about his character, and I don't think he's the kind of person who wants a spectacle. So it was just
Mm-hmm.
it was odd. That's all. That's all. But I do agree, it is a great
It
scene,
is.
and I actually really like the aftermath of it even more. Um, so now
Yeah.
next up we have
Yeah.
from user Randall Thor in my Discord server, just all caps, Code and Cal. There's a lot of scenes with the Code and Cal, but I guess we need to talk about it in general.
I mean, my guess would be that they're referring to the cleansing of Sidene.
Yeah, that's
Probably
probably
like
what they're
the
referring to,
biggest.
but they weren't
Yeah.
specific, and I like to punish people who are not specific. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, let's talk about the cleansing, because that is probably, in my opinion, one of the best built to moments in the Wheel of
I
Time.
agree. I think the thing that I found the most no, actually, that's not true. I was going to say what I found the most disappointing was that it happened at the beginning of a book, but it does happen at the end of a book, right?
It spans multiple because it
Yeah.
happens, and then there's a time jump back at the beginning of the next book, and then like
Okay.
it keeps happening because you have these characters who
That
you're
are in
flashing
different
to that's
places.
happening to during that time, right?
Gotcha.
And so
Gotcha.
it's one of the things that also fans seem to be confused about when exactly it happens and all this stuff because of that kind of time jarring.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
but
it is
yeah,
confusing, but one thing that I noticed is that when he did that sort of time jumping, I thought that Jordan did a good job of kind of giving you hints at like when it was happening using like a big storm or
hmm,
people feeling the power in one area, and he kind of gave you like these signposts in all of the different scenes to kind of give you an idea of like when it was happening.
he always gives you an anchor, and he just leaves it to you to
Yes.
figure it out. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Um,
Which I feel like was, I don't know, it's been a long time since I read the Song of Ice and Fire books, but I feel like I was a lot more confused with the time jumping in those books than I was in the Wheel of Time books. But I
yeah,
really liked the cleansing of Sidene. I love that Rand decided to use Nynaeve to help him to do that. And I throughout the
yes.
series, I love that he relies on Nynaeve so much and how much he just trusts her. I really like that aspect of it, and I didn't think he was going to be able to do it. Like I didn't think it was possible to cleanse Sidene. So like I thought that was really cool that they were able to do that.
You thought it was going to be a failure.
Yeah, I did.
Interesting. I've never heard someone say that, but I totally get why you would. And hitting on what you said, I actually just recorded a how they should adapt Nynaeve, and the number one thing I hit on is her chemistry. The actress's chemistry with Rand needs to be stellar because it needs to evolve from this like mothering figure to someone who I think becomes one of Rand's just best friends. I love their friendship and trust that is so rock solid between them.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that like he would have chosen maybe Egwene because they were childhood friends, but I think the fact that Nynaeve is older and she was the wisdom, so he kind of like looked up to her a little bit, and he just trusts her judgment more than Egwene, especially towards the end. Like that dynamic is really interesting. How Rand and Egwene don't necessarily get along, and they they want different things, but he always has Nynaeve to back him up. Like Nynaeve kind of turns on Egwene a little bit and like is more supportive of what Rand wants to do than what Egwene wants to do, and I love that.
Yeah, completely agree. And there's also the I think Nynaeve is she's the only Aes Sedai Rand doesn't view as an Aes Sedai. Is well, her and
Yes.
Elaine. He like even Egwene, he switches to viewing her as Aes Sedai first. It's
Mm-hmm.
only Nynaeve and Elaine that he sees as the people they are first and trusts. And I think that the fact that Egwene became the Amerlin is part of the reason that he had to pull back from her so much.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
All right, let's move on here. We have one from GRE. I believe that's pronounced Gree, but I'm not sure. So we have Rand contemplating destroying the pattern. This was one of the more intense moments that happened later in the series during Rand's
Mm-hmm.
emo rebellion phase. Did you think that was too out of character?
No. So I haven't read up on like fan theories or anything about this part of the series, but this is what I interpreted that to be. So whenever Min is being attacked, was it by, is it Grandal or who was that?
It starts with an M, right? It's not Mogideon, it's Masana,
Oh,
I believe.
yeah,
The
I think
Forsaken, I
so.
still
It's
have
one of them.
trouble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one that almost kills Min, and Rand is blocked from the power, and he like the only way he can save her is he accidentally touches the true power. Is that what it's called?
Hmm.
Um, so my interpretation, and then after that is like when he goes like real emo and real like dark. And my interpretation was that him touching the true power, which comes only from the dark one, right? I think that influenced him, and that was the dark one trying to turn Rand to the dark side, and that's why he like went all crazy like that. That was my interpretation of it.
Okay. Yeah, it is one of the things like that has real ramifications to the rest of the series. Like Ben flinches when Rand's around him at a couple times. There's things like that where she's clearly shaken by what happened,
Like
and you
PTSD.
can't blame
Yeah.
her. I mean, that's horrifying what happened. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I agree on that. And
Yeah, so I didn't think that him contemplating destroying the power was out of character. I thought that was the influence of him touching the true power and being influenced by the Dark Lord.
well, it wasn't the he wasn't contemplating destroying the power. He was contemplating destroying the
Oh,
pattern, everything.
sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This could also be referring to the other scene, so I want to touch on this as well, where Rand is literally like negotiating with the Dark One at the end, which is an interesting end for their conflict. And the Dark One is like,
Oh,
"What if we just destroy it all? What if it's just nothing?" And they actually like Rand is like, like he doesn't immediately say no, which
yeah. No,
I
I
found that interesting.
that is probably the scene they're referring to. I probably misinterpreted that.
No, it's my
Um,
misinterpretation. I'm the one who brought it up.
yeah. That I thought made sense that he would contemplate that because um, it would, I don't know. I didn't think it was out of character. I thought it was not necessarily a viable option, but it's something that he had to consider, and he had to understand um, that, like, because they also do those scenes where he's seeing what the world would be like with the Dark Lord like not existing or whatever, and how that's like not really a perfect world either. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting, and I thought it was one of like it's like they had to explore all the different options before he could really like pick one.
Yeah, and I do think it wasn't necessarily a wrong choice. I mean, he'd seen so much suffering, death, and destruction. It almost does seem like a maybe this could be better option. And then there's also the whole free will discussion where basically the Dark One's like, you can't kill me. If you kill me, there is no free will. Everyone is forced to the light, and that's awful. Which I thought was a
Mm-hmm.
really interesting take. And I know many fans are like, no, Rand should have killed him. That would have been the better option. but I think they missed the
No,
point.
I don't
Yeah, I
agree.
think they missed the point that like philosophically that's horrendous. You're taking away literal free will. Yeah. Okay, so next up we have one from one of my Patreons here, Johan, who has one of my personal favorite moments. The the light in Shinoa, seeing a dark friend being able to turn his back on the shadow for the first time in the series and embracing the light again, returning to his duty. Do you know what we're referring to here?
No.
So at the Battle of Falma, there is a Borderlander who is basically confesses to being a Dark Friend. It's I'm trying to remember his name here. God, I've so hard keeping track of everyone's names.
Me
Let
too.
me. It's God damn it. It's not. I want to say Falma, which is literally the name of the location it is at.
What happened in book 2?
Yeah, it happens at
Okay.
Falma.
Okay.
Let me just literally Google Borderlander Dark Friend, which also, I mean, we also have Verin's confession where she's like, by the way, I'm a Dark Friend,
Hmm.
and here's
Yeah,
everything I've
we should
learned.
talk about that in a second.
We should. Let's see. Oh, God damn it. Google just corrected Borderlander to Borderlands. What's the guy's name? I should know this.
Like, I remember a scene where we find out about a Borderlander who's a dark friend, but that's closer to the end of the book. I don't remember.
Is it?
Oh, is it Ingtar?
Yes, thank you. God.
Okay. Yes.
Um,
I know what you're talking
yeah.
about.
I kept wanting to say
Um,
Uno, but that's not right because Ingtar, or
yeah.
yeah, Uno's all the way there till close to the end.
Yeah. Uh, that surprised me. I wasn't expecting that at all. I mean, obviously it's really early in the series, and I don't think I was quite like didn't have the point of view that anyone could be a dark friend like at that point.
I think that was a strategic choice. I think that was Jordan telling you like these people are everywhere. Even the people who have been
Mhm.
fighting alongside the people who are good, the agents can be anywhere. I mean, it's not
Yes.
just the creepy innkeepers or anything like that. And I
The skinny ones.
Yeah, and it to me, Ingtar's going to the shadow is almost understandable in a weird way because I feel like before the events of the series, um, there's a lot of like I think a lot of people didn't take the shadow that seriously. Even if you're a Borderlander,
Mhm.
you're like it's been thousands of years. Like the Forsaken aren't around, the Dark One's not around. Like if someone was like serve the shadow, you're probably just like yeah whatever, I'll do this and then I'll walk away because it's nothing serious. And then all of a sudden
Mhm.
it's something really, really goddamn serious. And I feel like that was kind of whole Ingtar's conflict where he wanted to just stick his foot in and suddenly it was up to his neck.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't think he really understood what he was getting into, and he didn't think that it was going to actually affect him and the people he knew. Like, I think in his mind, it was something that was like the last battle was so far away that it like wouldn't really matter.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. So we have a couple we've already touched on here, so I'm going to skip over those. Sorry, guys. We have in all caps again, Dumai's Wells, which I feel like we can't ever have a
Oh
conversation about
man.
best Wheel of Time scenes without this coming up. So, do you have any hot takes on Dumai's Wells?
So while I feel like it is definitely an important battle and an important ending to one of the books, it's definitely not one of my favorites. I it's so bloody and it's so I mean it is amazing to see what kind of power the Ashaman really have, but it is a moment where Rand is broken and it affects him so deeply throughout the rest of the series, which is why I think it's definitely important and like is very meaningful to the series, but it's just so hard to read, and especially to see like Perrin is there and he's seeing what these Ashamen are doing and he knows that Rand is the one that's commanding it, and just to like see him so conflicted about what's going on, and then we as the reader are also conflicted, like we understand that Rand has been tortured basically, but also it's really hard to see or read about bodies being torn to pieces, especially when they're like trying to run away, and just it's a tough scene, man. It's a tough
It's going to be
one.
one that'll definitely make the TV show R rated.
Yes, for sure.
All right. So there's also here a scene that I've not heard often brought up. This is by Guinevere. I don't. I'm so bad with fantasy names. It's my biggest weakness on my channel. Spoilers. I adore Rand and Matt in the garden as he bows to Tuon. So this was a scene that I know shocked a lot of people, where Rand actually bends his knee to the Empress of the Shan-Chan after being the Dragon Reborn. How did you interpret that?
Um, I think I'm trying to remember at what point this is. I think this happens at the
Well,
end, right?
I can read the actual. Yeah, I can read the paragraph where it
No,
happens.
that's okay. I think I
Um,
know where it is. I think at this point,
okay.
Rand feels like he has no choice. Like this is after he's already approached her at least once, maybe more than once, and she's turned him down. And I
Hmm.
feel like he felt like there was nothing else that he could do. He needed to do this to bring everyone together in time for the last battle. I think it is a fun scene, especially because Matt is there, and to see. I mean, anytime Matt is with Tuon and is interacting with people from his old life, like it's just really funny, especially like the scene where Egwene, she's like, "You married Matt?" And she's just so like flabbergasted. I love that scene. It was so funny. But yeah, I think that Rand just felt like he had no choice. He was looking at the bigger picture. He needed to bring everyone together to help him fight the Shan-Chan, and that was like or not the Shan-Chan, the Shadow, and that is all like the only thing that he could do.
Okay, so do you mind if I read this real quick? Because I want to
Go
read
ahead.
it and then give my interpretation. So it starts
Okay.
off with Rand saying, "I allowed you to live when I could have destroyed you in an instant. This is because you have made life better for those under your rule. Though you are not without guilt for the way you have treated some, your rule is flimsy as paper. You hold this land together only through the strength of steel and Damani, but your homeland burns. I have not come here to destroy you or taunt you. I have come to now offer you peace, Empress. I have come without armies. I have come without force. I have come because I believe that you need me as I need you." And then he steps forward and he bows and he said, "I extend my hand in alliance. The last battle is here. Yada, yada, yada. Big clash." Um, so the way I take that is he's definitely threatening in a way. Like he's literally bringing up the fact, like, your homeland is burning. Like if you don't accept this, you're going to fall apart completely. And then in addition to that, he kind of says, like, everything here you're having to do through force of strength. So this is Rand at his like best, I think, when he is in Rand at this point, I believe. But I don't know. I took this as way more aggressive than I think a lot of people did. I always interpreted it as more of a threat than anything else, because he's literally saying, if you don't do as I'm asking here, yeah, I'm going to bow, which is what you asked for, but the whole world burns, including you, if you don't say yes.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could see that interpretation. I don't think I necessarily saw it as a threat, but more as just like him being honest and like explaining how dire their situation was to try and convince her. But yeah, yeah, I could
Yeah.
see it as a threat.
It could all, yeah, I see what your interpretation as well, where it's more of like it's just a statement of fact.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the situation. Are you really going to keep this fight
Yep.
up? Okay, that's fair. So I'm trying to get to one per person here, so I'm skipping over quite a few. So I'm sorry, uh, people who are posting multiple. We are limited on time here. And this is someone from Jennifer Nicole, and it's a scene that I think I also just talked about in my Adapting Nynaeve video, where it says Nynaeve loses her block.
That was a good
So
moment.
that is one of the best character transformations, so well earned. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I was so happy that that happened. I don't think I'd put it in like top moments of the series, but as far as like Nynaeve goes, obviously it's a really big character moment for her. And
Mhm.
I had already read that book before and that it happens in, but I had forgotten that she loses her block, and so like that was really fun to experience it again on a reread where I didn't remember that it happened. I love that it happened so that she could save Lan, and it was a good scene. And it makes Nynaeve so much more powerful now because that block was such a limiting factor on her. Like has a lot of power when it comes to the power, a lot of strength, but she couldn't use it whenever she wanted to. I also had loved how she, prior to that moment, had been able to trick herself, like make herself angry enough to use the power. But now, like that block is gone, and she's able to do so much more, and she becomes so powerful from that point.
Well, she's the strongest female channeler at that point. I believe so. She is the strongest female channeler in existence, strength wise.
At that point, I think so because
Yeah.
there's that Sean Chan. Damani that they free that I think is more powerful than her, right?
Oh yeah. What's her? I can never remember the Sean Chan
Starts with an A.
names. Yeah. I almost said Aganor. That's wrong in
I
every possible way.
want to say like Alina, but I don't think it's actually Alina. It's something like that though.
Well, that's the confusing thing with Robert Jordan names. So many of them are so close to real
Very
world names. You
yes.
just want to say the real world name.
Well, and so many of them are similar to each other. Like a lot of them are spelled differently. Like one thing that I noticed when I was filming a bunch of like videos, like spoiler videos about the Wheel of Time, like the people who are from Arad Doman are called Domani, and like the Shanchan slaves are Damani. It's like it's not Domani, but it's like very similar, like Damani, Domani. It's very similar, but they're spelled very different. Like so, you don't really notice it until you're saying it out loud.
Well, you can even just say with two of the main characters, Elaine and Gwaine, like, come on, man.
Yeah, yeah, those
uh,
are pretty similar.
so we have a bunch from Ipa here, who's one of my frequent contributors. Love Ipa here, great guy, but he's listed 5, so I have to select one. And he has 2 that both I'm curious to hear your response to: Moiraine's death and Swan Stilling. Which of those 2 would you rather talk about? Or sorry, Swan Stilling getting healed.
Let's talk about Moiraine's death.
Okay.
Because I, for a very long time, really thought that Moiraine was dead. You know, she doesn't come back until like the last couple of books or whatever, and before that, they kind of hint that they're gonna, because Tom had that letter and stuff. But in most of my time reading the series, because I only read like the first half multiple times, I thought she was legitimately dead, and I was very upset when she died the first time I read it. Moiraine is one of my favorite characters, and I was always so frustrated in the early books that the boys wouldn't trust her more. Excuse me. I know that a lot of people were suspicious of her, and I think Jordan kind of wrote her in a way that you should be suspicious of her, but I never was. I always thought that, like, obviously she knows what she's talking about and she's trying to help you. Like, you guys just need to trust her. And so when she died and they lost that, like, wise wizard figure, the person who was going to lead them, I was devastated. I didn't know how they were going to like make the right choices without her. And for her to die the way that she did, I was, yeah, it hit me pretty hard. And I spent years thinking that she was really dead.
It's funny. I it's one of the deaths that I really thought was real too. Like first time through, I was like, wow, this is big. And
well, she was gone for so long. Like if
oh
it was
yeah.
a book or 2, like okay, but it was like half the series.
Do you think they'll keep bringing her back for the show?
I hope so, but I guess in many ways it's not necessary to the main storyline.
She comes back and she brings peace between Rand and the other conflicting armies, which something else could do. They can manufacture something else, and it does take a good amount of page time with Matt. So there's some debate there whether or not I hope they don't, but I could see them doing it. Interesting. So
that is one thing about Jordan that I think some people might not like about the series, is that it's hard for him to keep his characters dead. Like so many of them come back, and for many people that they don't like it when characters don't stay dead. I'm not one of those people. Like I said, I love it when characters aren't actually dead. But I think that's a problem that a lot of people have with the series.
I agree. And I find it ever interesting that I keep hearing how Rafe, the showrunner, loves Moiraine and is such a fan of her. So I'm hoping that her role is amped up and continued throughout the series. 100% chance he's not listening, but if you are, buddy, I support that. And of another character who I think I've heard Rafe is a big fan of, I am as well, and I think is a fan favorite, and I hope they increase his role, is this is the Logain. This is just, no one brought this up. I want to bring this up with you. How do you feel about Logain and his redemption arc, I believe is the way to put it?
Yeah. I like Logain. I was really some of those, like the whole stuff that happens with the Black Tower at the end was fascinating. I love that, especially reading from like that one Aes Sedai who ends up bonding, like the Ashaman, and they like bond each other, and then they can kind of like read each other's minds. Like I loved all of that, and them trying to escape, and then of course like Logain is there. I love that Logain ended up being a good guy. At the very end, when he has to like make some sort of, I'm trying to remember, he has to like make a decision about something. Can you remind me what happens at the very end in the last battle?
So Logain, I believe what you're talking about is he decides to basically use the Ashima to save loads of civilians. Like he's responsible for
Yes.
saving thousands and thousands of people, and there's dribbles and hints that that completely reframe is going to completely reframe how
Yes.
the world views the Black Tower.
Yes. And I think that moment is kind of what leads to what Min had visions of him having a
Oh yeah.
crown on his head. Because at that moment, I remember the civilians that he saved are just like in awe of him and like talking about him. And yeah, when he was healed from being stilled or whatever, I was really surprised at first. Granted, it had already happened for Swan, so I shouldn't have been that surprised. But for Nynaeve to be able to figure it out for like male channeling when she can't even see the male like source or anything, like that would really surprise me.
Mhm.
And yeah, I really like his character and his character arc. I hope that it has a big role in the series as well, the show.
So here's my hot take on Logain. He became more of a hero figure, and this might be controversial for me to say, than Rand ever did for the people. Like Rand never became the typical hero of the people. He was always dealing with too high of plots. He was dealing with the
Mm-hmm.
big guys. He was never down in the streets, really doing anything like that. And Logain got the glory that I think a lot of people, when they hear of the Chosen Dragon Reborn, uh, would assume would go to that character. He is the person that is suddenly getting all this adoration from the people, where meanwhile Rand is often either seen as a conqueror or kind of a hero, but he's very separated from it. And I think, Logain in the end did get what he wanted. He became the world renowned hero in a lot of ways, which I thought was really cool. He managed to
Yeah,
get the glory of the dragon without having to go through nearly as much.
yeah, that's really interesting. I think that for a lot of people, the idea of the dragon was like a scary idea, and that was part of the reason why. I mean, but yeah, you're right that Rand didn't do a lot with the people. Although there are a few scenes, like I'm remembering the scene where he was up at Dragon Mountain, he comes down where there's like an orchard that is just like completely failing and rotting, and he like revives all of the apple trees. Like there's a couple times where he does interact with like
Right,
the regular people. But
right.
yeah,
But
I do think Logain does more of that for sure.
and I don't think that's necessarily Rand getting glory. It's more Rand just doing his whole Jesus-y thing.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
it's not like the people are coming up to him and singing his praises like they do at Logain at the
Right.
end.
Yeah, but I also think part of that is just people are scared of the Dragon Reborn
Oh yeah,
because of what it signifies, the end and like the last battle.
it's got to be so weird to like live in a civilization where your prophecies are like the chosen one's going to come and he's going to bring the end times, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that is pretty much all of the questions that I've read that I wanted to go ahead and ask you. Thank you so much for coming on for an episode of
Oh, we
WoTTalk.
didn't talk about Verin. Can we talk about
Oh
Verin real quick?
yes, absolutely. I'm so sorry about that. I literally thought we did, but we do need to talk about that.
Yeah. We just barely mentioned it. That is definitely one of my favorite moments in the series. It's up there. Okay, so the first time that I read that part, I remember being really, obviously, really surprised and shocked. And this last reread, I went into it knowing that Verin was a dark friend,
Hmm.
but I didn't remember the specifics, like of why she was a dark friend and like how she got around it. So the whole time I was doing this reread, was looking for clues. I was like, where are the clues? Where she's being shady. And I've heard some people say that they were suspicious of Verin, but on this reread, when I was looking for the clues of her being a dark friend, I couldn't find anything. And so before I finally got to that scene, I started to second guess myself. I was like, am I remembering right? Is it Verin or is it somebody else who was a dark friend the whole time? I really thought it was Verin, but like I did not see any clues of her being evil when I was looking for them. So when I finally got to that scene and it happened and she explained how she was doing it because she wanted to like do research and like learn about it, but that in the end her heart was really with the light. It made so much more sense because I was so confused this last reread the whole time trying to find clues of her being a dark friend and I couldn't find it. And it was so heartbreaking. And then the way that she like, got around her vow by like taking the poison so that she could tell Egwene everything. It was also such like an important moment because it gives Egwene so many clues about who is a dark friend in the tower, and they're able to catch so many of them, and it's a really big plot moment. But I was gonna say the fact that her and her warder both like agreed, like, okay, we're gonna die, we're gonna take this poison, and he's gonna go say bye to his family or whatever, and she is gonna go take care of this. It was just so heartbreaking. I'm pretty sure I cried.
So people,
And then in like the following books, when Matt is like waiting for her to show up because she left that letter saying that like maybe she'll come back, and he's just like waiting, and it was just like heartbreaking for me knowing that she was dead and she wasn't coming back, and he was like looking for her.
so I have so many thoughts on this. One, did she think she was going to go do the poisoning thing and revealing to Matt if she somehow couldn't with Egwene? Was it like, oh, I'm going to go do it with Matt, and then Egwene dropped in her lap and she was like, oh, okay, I'll do it here instead? Like, I'm really curious as to what her thought process was and how that came about.
Yeah, like what her backup plan was. Wasn't it like, I think her backup plan, or like what her other plan was to find an oath rod, right? Like she was trying to find an oath rod, and if she could take the vows off of her, then I thought like that was when she was going to go back to Matt and just like not die.
Right.
That was my interpretation.
Oh, I thought she was probably.
I don't think she would have done the confession with Matt because he wouldn't have understood, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I know, like, yeah, plan A was definitely find an oath rod. That clearly did not work out for her super well.
I was frustrated. Like, I wanted that to work out. Like, why? Yeah. I didn't want her to die. Obviously, I never want anybody to die. But yeah, it was pretty heartbreaking. And I just thought it was so funny that, like, I knew that she was a dark friend, but I, like, couldn't see any hints of it when I was reading the series this time around.
I think the only hint is she says something in an early book that is demonstrably a lie. She lies at one point. Yeah, I think I don't remember what it was, but I've read that multiple times, so it's probably right. I've read fans talking about it. She says something that is just false, which I said I cannot do.
Yeah, which it was also funny when she revealed herself to Egwene. The way that she did it was like to lie about like the color of something, or like something mundane, and then Egwene was just like, "Wait, what? Oh my god, what?"
Verin has a sense of humor.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I loved it.
Then there's the so okay. Everyone talks about wanting spin-off novels from Wheel of Time, whether it's following Matt and Tuon, whether it's following Logain, whether it's following post Last Battle Rand. One of the ones I want to see most is following Verin through her journey of joining the Shadow with this like mission in mind. Like, I want to know, I would be so down to see the like inner workings of the Shadow like we've never seen them before. And I also want to know what horrible stuff she had to do to maintain her cover, because dark friends get missions. They have to do horrific things. And
I remember thinking it was kind of surprising that she hadn't been caught somehow.
Well, I'm sure she did terrible things. I'm sure she did monstrous things to maintain her cover, and it was for the greater good. And I want to know what it was. I want to know how much it would reframe my view of Verin if I knew she had to kill children, if she assassinated somebody, like that stuff she might have had to do.
Yeah, that would be fascinating for sure. I think I would love to see Matt and Tuon, or just like anything in Shan-Chan, like even if it's before these books or whatever, like maybe when Hawking first goes over there and like sets everything up, or and also something in the lands of Shara. Like that kind of was incorporated towards the end of the book, and I feel like I didn't get enough of it, and I didn't really understand everything about it. Like we got a couple glimpses into that world, but not enough, and I didn't understand it. So I would love to see something about that side of things. Well, or like Noel's adventures when he's one of my favorite characters, and we didn't have a chance to talk about him, but when he was first introduced, I was so suspicious of him. I was like, is he a Forsaken in disguise? Like, what is going on? This guy, he knows too much. I don't know who he is. And so when it was finally revealed who he was, I was so surprised, because in my mind, Jane Farstrider had like lived a lot longer ago. Like I didn't get the timeline right. And to find out that that was who he was, and then the way he died, I definitely cried when he died. And then I cried when he came back with the Horn of Valir and saved Oliver. Like I was just a mess. Because the first thing he did was like beeline to Oliver to save him, and I just love that so much. And speaking of like subverting the idea that Rand was going to blow the horn of Valyr, I was totally not expecting that it was going to be Oliver at the end, because of course we all thought that Matt was still tied to it. But to find out that Oliver could blow it like that totally blew my socks off. Like, I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Oliver, so I didn't necessarily like that.
Really?
Oh,
I love Oliver.
I don't
He's
like
such a
child
cute kid.
characters, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except
No,
for a
I
couple.
loved him.
All right. Well, there's one other thing I was gonna say about the Verin situation,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, did you find so her confession scene? She's just then like she's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always kind of found it strange that didn't Egwene just kind of like I haven't read this scene in like a year or two, but didn't Egwene just kind of like accept it and walk out and be like, all right, you're dead, we're done. I always thought that was kind of odd, and in character, maybe she should have tried to heal her, because I know you can heal poison. I always just found that strange.
Yeah, I think that she I think she assumed, I mean, Egwene's never been strong at healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think she assumed that she wouldn't be able to heal her. I did wonder, like, why didn't she call for help and ask for someone else to heal her? But she was being sort of like held captive by Red's sisters at that
Yeah.
point, so maybe she didn't think that they would help,
Well, and
or
so many of the
I
Reds
don't know.
are.
I
Yeah.
I remember thinking that, like, why didn't she have someone heal her? Like, obviously she probably couldn't have done it herself because she's not strong in that, but she could have asked for help.
Yeah.
But afterwards, she like lets her, she has to pretend that Verin's asleep in her bed when she knows that she's really dead or whatever, and she like puts a blanket on her. Like, that was creepy,
That was
man.
dark.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
there's also the so Verin had to believe she was going to die. She had to know she was going to die for it to work. So maybe the assumption is she just took something that's definitely can't be fixed. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
Well, but Egwene wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, it's never communicated to Egwene. But they're
Yeah,
and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can't heal poisons, but I'm pretty sure you can.
I would think you
Because it's
could.
the symptoms from poison that kills you. So just heal the
Right.
symptoms. We've seen stuff like that healed. I don't know. It's a question that I'm going to leave for the audience here at the end. You see, I transitioned. I did it smoothly. What is your explanation for the death of Verin? And if you did not already, like and subscribe to Bedtime Bookworm. Jade's channel is fantastic, and she has done great videos on the Wheel of Time and more general fiction as well. So anything else you'd like to say to sign off, Jade?
Thanks for having me. I've been wanting to, do a WoTTalk with you for a while. I've watched a lot of them up to spoiler-free moments, and now I'm so excited that not only do I get to watch the spoiler parts of them, but I got to participate in one too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, anytime. You're welcome back. All right, everybody, like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here, and have a good one. Peace.
Bye.